All right, there we go. Welcome to the Hip Hop Hustle podcast. I'm super excited about my next guest, hailing all the way from the UK. I think you're the first person I've interviewed from the UK, and to be honest, I've started at a pretty good level. I've got the one and only Harry Shotta, who is making some absolute waves in the UK, but also globally. I know you did a tour to New Zealand as well, so you've done tours internationally, and one of the most impressive things that I saw when I was, again, becoming used to your music and getting used to grime in general is you got a track Animal, which actually beats a world record of Eminem's for Rap God. He had the most words. I think it's the most words in a song, and that is overtaken by the very man who I'm speaking to right now, but extremely accomplished artist. So definitely make sure you check him out. But it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
No, it's good to be here, man. Like I said, been chatting to you back and forth on the Instagram for quite a while now, so it's good to finally make it happen, man. And where are you based, man?
I'm based in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah, you've been to Melbourne
yeah,
before.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, it's one of these things. It's weird because you know, it's so interesting to me because like Australia has such an affinity for hip hop. It's starting to really grow and all types of hip hop. It's not just, classic American hip hop, but I think, grime is underrated in what it brings to the table. Like I started listening to grime probably maybe 8 years ago or something like that. Like, you
Yeah.
started with people like Skepta and Wiley, and then you start to really get into it and start to understand where it comes from. But the
Mm.
roots are so interesting, much like in the US.
No, definitely, man. I mean, obviously, with me, I come from almost the lineage before grime, which is drum and bass and jungle. That's kind of what we do, man. Do you know what I'm saying? And when we're doing most of our shows, it's drum and bass jungle music, which inspired the likes of Dizzy. Even Skepta said the other day, one of the first lyrics he ever learned was a Skibbity lyric, which is a drum and bass MC. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of gone from sort of sound system culture in the UK, people doing the reggae things, people doing the jungle thing, people doing drum and bass, then to grime and obviously garage. And now you've got the whole drill movement, which is huge over here as well. And it's just a massive like lineage of different sounds that have all added onto each other and just added onto the culture, man. And hip hop's always, the main backbone, the main influence to everything we do. I always say it's just like drum and bass and grime. They're like cousins of hip hop. They're offshoots from the tree. You know what I mean? It's just that it's our own spin on things rather than just copying what the Americans do, or that sort of one of my favorite sounds, but the boom bap sound, adding our own thing to it and putting that little spin on it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Do you remember what it was that attracted you to hip hop originally? Because it's like
Yeah.
there's one thing to love hip hop, but then there's another thing to adapt it and make it your own. I think they're both very different challenges. But like, what did you enjoy being exposed to that type of music?
Oh man, when I first heard hip hop, I was just blown away by it. I was exposed to it at quite a young age as well. I was 6 when I first heard someone rapping, and I was just like, "What is this?" It just blew me away, man. I would just go in my sister's room. My sisters were into more like soul and R&B and that kind of stuff, but certain people were playing hip hop tunes and rap tunes in that kind of mixture as well. And when I heard some of the stuff, I was just enchanted by it, man. I'd be up in my sister's room, going through her tapes, causing havoc in there. Do you know what I mean? And she didn't want me in her room, but I was like, I've got to listen to this music. So in the end, she actually bought me a hip hop record. And from that moment on, I was hooked, man. I started selling all my toys to buy albums. I was just like, I didn't need the toys anymore. I'd got some broken down old record player that I bought what we call a boot fair over here. And every week, like my nan would give me £5 and I'd go and spend, that money on whatever hip hop I could find at the time. And maddest thing was as well, where my nan lived, there's a shop up the road which actually sold imports as well. So you'd have to go up to London. I'm not actually from London, I'm just outside, but normally you'd have to go up to London to get hold of these records. But just up the road from where my nan lives was a shop that was actually bringing in a lot of the early hip hop, like the BDPs and, the Public Enemies and that kind of era that like, I suppose I was like kind of really into the era for me when I was pretty Kane, EPMD, Slick Rick, that 88 era. And obviously it went into the 90s, which is probably my favorite era of hip hop. People will always argue which best the 80s or the 90s, and there's argument for both, man. But that 90s era for me of just, like groups like Black Moon and that kind of vibe, and Wu-Tang, obviously, and Nas and Biggie. And that era was just like so inspirational to me in terms of hip hop. And then it kind of guided me in terms of what I wanted to do lyrically and everything else. It was a very inspirational time, man.
Interesting because like the first song that you hear or the first exposure to hip hop, you almost don't really understand it to begin
No, I
with.
didn't
It's
understand it.
it's the sound, it's the attitude, it's the tonality. It's like all the things you can't explain as a kid because you just haven't been exposed to, number one, music in general, because people just haven't taught you how to listen to stuff, and number two, it's such a complex genre in terms of what it stands for, what it means, what people are talking about, that it takes a
Yeah.
long time before you can really recognize the lyrical side of it. You're just listening to the sound and the feeling of it all.
Yeah, obviously when you're first, because when you're that young and you're just feeling the vibes, I would say that's what it is. You're feeling the vibes of the music, the phonetics, and then obviously when you delve deeper into the culture and what the messages people are putting into it, that's why KRS said years ago, it's edutainment, man. What they were doing with what they back in the day, especially a lot of the rappers from that sort of conscious era, they were really like kind of teaching people around the world about all sorts of issues, man, and it was exposing the world to what was going on in, let's just say, New York and LA, when it went sort of more to the West Coast or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, it was education of what was going on, because we didn't have the internet then. We didn't know what was going on in South Central. Like now, if you want to go, you can look at anything in the world and know what's going on through social media, whether that's a good or a bad thing, a bless or a curse, you know what I mean? But you can actually get that information. Whereas back then, I got most of my information. Obviously, I went to school and stuff, so I kind of got what they taught me at school and everything as well. But I got a lot of information and a lot of sort of what I believe in and everything else through hip hop and through that culture. So it's a form that, yeah, when you first listen to it, you just, like I said, you're feeling a vibe. You might just feel the energy. You might hear a Wu-Tang record and just feel the energy of that. But then you start to dig deeper into what they're talking about on certain records and everything else, and the deepness of, you know, their whole belief system in the 5% and all this, and like and stuff that RZA writes about in his books and all that. And there's some real deep knowledge going on within that music, man. And you start to gradually like sort of go a little bit deeper. You know, I mean, when I was listening to people like Public Enemy and BDP, I started to, you know, go and read the books as well. You know what I mean? Actually do my own research into what they were talking about. So very educational, man, and just a beacon of light in the world that's obviously gone global, man. I mean, you're sat there in Melbourne, I'm here in the UK, and we're talking about it right now, connected with it. Do you know what I'm saying? So very powerful tool, man.
Remember what it was like as a kid? Like compared to all your friends? Did you try show your friends? Did did you go
Yeah.
like, this is gold that I found? Did they like respond at all?
Yeah, I was very much like that, man. I was like, I used to like rap in the playground all the time. So because it wasn't as mainstream as it is now, people would always be, oh, please do a rap, do a rap. And like after a while, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to charge you a bit of money. So I started hustling, rapping in the playground for a bit of change and stuff as well, which was good, man. And but then there was certain people I connected with, like one of my best friends to this day. He just felt it the same way I did. But we was probably the only two. And as we got older, more people kind of gravitated towards the music. It started to get a bit more mainstream. It was more acceptable to listen to it and everything else. Do you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, when he was a kid, man, it was quite special, because it wasn't, you know, now everyone, if you're talking about, you know, a Kanye or whatever, you know, whatever, these acts have broken through this. It's basically, I'm not saying the music's pop, but they are pop status. Whereas the stuff we listened to was a little bit underground. It was a little bit, you couldn't just find it on a normal radio station. They weren't playlisting it back then. Do you know what I mean? Even MTV wasn't trying to show the videos. You know what I mean? You had your Yo MTV Raps, and that was about it. But that was good, because obviously that was like something we used to get on the channel called Sky over here. And it was every day, man. Like it was every day, half an hour, Yo MTV Rap, American hip hop videos. On the weekend, Fab Five Freddy would interview someone. So that was another way we got the information once MTV actually opened the doors. But you know, it's been a mad journey, man. I've been listening to hip hop and still listen and love it to this day, man. I think there's still great music out there. Some people will argue that it's all mumble rap and all that, but I don't agree with that at all. I think there's loads of great music out there and loads of great artists who are doing their thing. And sometimes hip hop's always been as well. I would say there's always been different facets and styles. There's always been, it's needed a balance. Do you know what I'm saying? If it's all just one thing, that's never what it's been about. You know what I mean? You gravitate towards whichever area you like more, which is fine. But to call something totally whack and rubbish just because it's like energy music or it's not lyrical, let's say, is not really how I would look at it. You know what I mean? I try and
I
take like rules and stuff from all the sounds.
I 100% agree with you. I think that whatever people like, and it's different music for different occasion. You know, I don't listen to, 90s boom bap when I'm having a party, because it's not the same vibe. But I'll put on some trap shit, and I'll put on some, party vibes, and it's just whatever suits the vibe, and you can like it all. You don't have to be like, I only like this. And to be honest, and when you said, you don't want it to stay the same, that is 100% correct. You don't want to. That's what happened with other genres.
Music, No, exactly. And that's the beauty of the music. If it fits whatever mood, you know what I'm saying? This is hip hop for all occasions, I would say. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're just on a chill out vibe, Tribe Called Quest, you know what I mean? If you want to get amped, Wu-Tang, if you want to throw in some party vibes, like you said, some of the trap vibes and that, you know, Future, whoever, there's so much you can gain from the music if you keep an open mind. And it's a shame where people just become, they call themselves a backpacker, or oh no, they're just into the drill thing. They don't fuck with like the East Coast sound or whatever. They should just keep it open mind, man, because there's great music in each what you would call subgenre of hip hop to me, man.
I just think like, yeah, you can have your preference as to what's your favorite, but
Yeah.
like you can dabble in it. And especially with like boom bap and like 90s hip hop, that era is not here anymore. So if you limit yourself to that, you actually don't get any new music. Like you're only listening to an era of music that was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like,
I
why
mean,
would you limit
would you
yourself?
say, no, you're right. I agree with you totally, man. Something like, so in terms of boom bap not being around now, would you not say like a Griselda is kind of bringing that sound back to the new audience?
Yeah, but I think Griselda brings back the elements of 90s hip hop, but
Essence,
it's
yeah.
still not 90s hip hop
Not
because
in
the
that sense,
sound is
now.
better. They're still using, synth machines. They're still using, a lot of hi-hats, which is they're still using elements of modern day music to make
Mm,
sure that their griminess is still palatable, but it's not
mm.
using beats that were used in the 90s exclusively.
Yeah,
They're still
yeah,
making it
yeah.
like modern boom bap. They're still adding those extra elements to it.
Yeah.
So
No, you're right, man. You're right, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Because obviously when you listen to say an Alchemist production compared to like a Buckwild production from that era, they are very different. Even though it is sort of bringing back the essence of the loops and the process of making it in that way rather than creating it on a keyboard and more of a Swiss Beats kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So, but I think they're definitely bringing back the essence, man. Definitely bringing back the
I
essence.
think the older guys are coming back. Busta Rhymes dropped an album last year that was really good. He brought, again, a modern sound, but like
Mm.
with interesting beats, and he brought, the essence of hip hop. Nas has had a resurgence. All these people who have become,
Nas's last three albums have been great, man.
yeah, King's
Definitely.
Disease 2 was my favorite
Yeah, me
of,
too.
of
That was the
those.
one out of the three.
Yeah. And I think it's just that those guys are showing us that age doesn't define hip hop, but they're also showing that you need to develop. Like they're
No,
still
they definitely, yeah,
changing.
yeah, yeah.
They're not the
Mm.
same artists as they were in the 90s. They're not
They
doing the
can't
same
be, man.
shit.
They can't be, and that's why I think that whole you mentioned Nas, for instance, him hooking up with Hit Boy, someone who's a little bit more of this generation, but still has his foot kind of in that he knows about the past as well. You know what I mean? But he's it's not like he's doing a whole album with Primo, who I love, but he's actually working with a producer that's a little bit more of this generation, which brings out a new sound and a new vibe in him, and that's how it can carry forward, man. But I think what those guys are definitely doing, they are showing that you don't have to retire from hip hop at a certain age, whereas before it was an LL or Ice Cube, they would be like doing movies after their third or fourth albums because maybe they just didn't have the hunger and the passion anymore. Or maybe someone said, it's a young man's sport, man, and it's not really your time to be rapping anymore. Whereas now, you look at, I mean, I think Conway like is nearly 40 or something. Someone told me the other day, you know what I mean? And he's just blowing to a certain extent now. So I think the age thing has definitely changed over the years. Whereas back in the day, it was considered if you was rapping at 40, you shouldn't be rapping anymore. But I think that's changed now. I think the audience has grown as well, man. There's people who loved hip hop when they were young and they still love it now, whether they're 45 or even 50, you know what I mean? So the audience has grown with it as well.
Yeah, I think it was like a teenager in a weird way in the 90s. It's kind of matured now to have it
Yeah.
all. Like it's
Mhm.
just developed, and all those mature guys are just like and why would you want your favorite artist to retire at 25? Like
Yeah.
no one's in
Yeah.
their prime at 25. Even athletes get their like prime is between 25 and 30ish because you need time
Yeah.
in sport. So like
And
if,
it's like, yeah, if you take, I totally agree with you. And if you take someone like a JayZ, reasonable doubt he was rapping about his times in the streets, hustling. So that was that era. And then he makes something like what was the one we was talking about his relationship for? What's it called? That
yeah,
album?
Carter 4. No,
Not the Carter Four,
not
the
Carter.
499 thing, when it was like
Yeah, yeah.
some number thing, but
Yeah,
no
yeah, yeah.
ID solely.
I got
Yeah,
got
where he,
confused with Lil Wayne.
oh, okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
But
he
on
did
that
have, I
album,
think he had the Carters. Maybe I'm getting
yeah,
it wrong. And then but he had the track, was it 666?
I'm trying to
666?
find the JayZ's album now that I'm talking about. It's 444, I think.
444. There
44,
it
yeah.
is.
So my point is that like from Reasonable Doubt, which came out, it says there 1997 to 2017, he's going to be telling a whole different story, which he did on that album compared to what he went through before. He's a totally different person now. And I think that's the thing. As people grow, they can, if they grow within their music and don't think they have to rap about the things they rapped about 20 years ago, or they don't try and too much sound like what's going on now, then they can still have a place in the industry and be top of the game, man. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I also think that what JayZ did so well is he's on a different level to like 99.99% of people in the world. He's a billionaire. He's extremely successful. The roots that he came from, a lot of people are like, you don't live that anymore. But what he did really well was he brought human emotion into a struggle that people will ordinarily feel. I think that's what he does so well, is like, despite his privilege right now, he still can share his humanity and can still share his flaws. And that's what he did in 444, the track where he talks about, you know, cheating on Beyonce, and he apologizes and he goes through the emotions of the pain that I cause you and the shame that I feel, where, and that is an emotion that everyone can understand, whether they go through it personally, they can still align with like shame and, you know, feeling responsibility and guilt and all those things. So I think that is development as an artist, and you would want an artist to be like that.
Yeah, and I think he's aged well with it. Do you know what I'm saying? He's and he's not afraid to now show that vulnerability, or say sorry on a record. God knows how many times he said it on that tune. You know what I mean? Because he really makes you believe it. Whereas there's other rappers who still think they have to play a certain role, even if they're of a certain age, and they're the ones that don't maybe grow so well and develop so well and have such a long career because they're strictly based on an image of a tough guy or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that's why his maturity is shown through, and he's managed to keep that audience and always elevate what he's doing, man. Like you say, he's a very special case in terms of rap and where he comes from and how long he's been here. Because you've got to remember, he was like rhyming with like Big Daddy Kane and people like that, and the Jazz, who was one of the first QuickTime rappers. Do you know what I'm saying? Going way back. So for him to still be in this pinnacle position now, whereas so many from his generation are still here, they might be touring, they might be doing shows, but they're not regularly putting out music or regularly jumping on the hottest tunes and spitting verses of the year and all this kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So hats off to the guy, man.
Yeah. Well, I just love seeing that people, they also weren't just stuck in hip hop in music. Like when you mentioned Ice Cube, he was one of the first to show that you didn't have to just be a rapper, that you could be a movie star. And he transitioned out of it. You know, JayZ went from artist to business person, and he's obviously still releasing music, but he's a businessman more than anything else. You got people like 50 Cent who use that as inspiration. He moved from music to obviously being more than that, a business person, you know, a TV executive. Like what it showed was that you didn't have to be put in one lane, that you could actually, you know, use hip hop to get you out of where you were, but that you could also use it to elevate you to the next level in your career, in the sense of there's no limitations. You know, Joe Budden, he's a podcaster now. He just does podcasts, and that's
he's
his
it,
career. Yeah. So
and
like,
he's good at it. He's really good at it. I love Joe Budden podcast, man.
what he's got a great, like, he's got a lot of passion. He doesn't pull any punches, and he argues with people on his show. I'm not a huge argumentative person, so that's not my style. But like when he fights the people on the show and he argues, it's actually really entertaining.
Yeah, it is, man. Because it's like with him, he could just blow up and be like that, but in 10 minutes time, he'll be bigging his friend up who's on the show with him, whatever. Do you know what I mean? He's like, it's just his style, isn't it? And it's the passion. And then sometimes passion comes out that way in some people, man. But like you say, he's a great example of someone who's had quite a long career in hip hop. And, you know, what he's done with when he had the Spotify deal, I think that's one of the biggest deals at the time for podcasts, man. And then, you know, he broke down a lot of doors with that in terms of sort of fighting for the intellectual property and all kinds of stuff as well. So like you said, a lot of these guys, you know, they've transcended mad into business. Everyone will always mention your Diddy's, 50s, JayZ's, but there's others like the Rick Ross, you know what I mean? Even your Master P back in the day, who's done so much stuff outside of hip hop. Like you say, Ice Cube went into the movie thing, even writing now and doing that. Dr. Dre with the headphones. So there's so much entrepreneurial stuff as well.
Yeah. And so many people are making their own labels now. You know, they're taking, you know, the inspiration of being independent, but putting it in their own label. And Tech9 was one of the very first to ever do that. So
and he just like done his thing, man. It's huge what he did. And obviously Chris Calico was a big artist for him as well. And I love Tech Man because he just done his own thing in his own lane yet again, and didn't wait for the majors or wait for anyone. He just went out there and did it, created an audience and created something that's a huge business. Do you know what I'm saying? So man, yeah, these guys, man, they do their thing definitely.
You look at people like that and see that as an inspiration for you. Obviously, it's a completely different country these people are in. It's a different landscape for them.
Mm.
But how do you use that to build your own career and your own steps into making you and finding you at the level that you want to be at? At the end, there's always an end at some point, but do you use it as inspiration?
Yeah, man, definitely, because I've dealt with record labels in the past and publishing offers and all this kind of stuff. And what I've found is it just slows you down. So when you're off that mode of someone like a Tech9, who's a beast, who I've been inspired by myself in terms of the flows and patterns as well, because I do a lot of, obviously, the double time, fast spitting, but just what he's done with his thing, created it, put his own stamp on it, very inspirational for someone like me, man. Do you know what I mean? Because I sometimes, I don't know, man, these days I think the independent route is the way to go, man. Do you know what I mean? And even if you start off independent and then you can get some leverage, and then you're not just coming to a label and they offer you a 360 deal and trying to take everything you've got, you can at least kind of like balance it out and get a bit of deal out of them, because you're coming to them with an audience. They haven't created your audience, you've created your own. So then they have to really come with the push or the right marketing ideas, or, even if they can open doors in terms of radio and playlists and all these kind of things that sometimes as an independent artist can be a bit of a struggle. So they have, obviously, working with record labels and stuff, they have got that some advantages, but the main thing I love about being in is independent is I could record a song this week, shoot a video for it next week, and it'd be out. In, you know what I mean? You've got that control. You've got that. You can just bang out your stuff without having to ask an A&R man. And you deliver a tune. They want a singer on it or whatever else. You can control your own destiny, and that's what the likes of Tech9 have obviously done, and done very well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, because I had this conversation recently with Flash, a previous guest on the show, and he was also like, you get suckered into a 360 deal when you have zero money, zero leverage, and you can't push back to fight for anything that you want because you've got no leverage. And it's really, that is like, the more leverage you have in any deal, the better off you're going to be, and get a good lawyer. Because I watched King Richard the other day. The film about, Serena and Venus Williams' father. It's really more about him and the rise of Venus Williams, and Serena's kind of in there as well. But it's about that, and part of the movie explores when they're getting offers for deals with your Nikes and stuff like that, and and getting agent deals. And so that world of you come from the streets, you've never had anything, then they're offering you hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions.
That's why it's hard to turn it down. And you might need it, man. You might have to take that publishing check. Do you know what I mean? You might have to do it, but you might. I've heard of so many cases, man, of people really regretting that down the line. But at the time, you've got to pay the gas, you've got to pay the rent. You might have mouths to feed. You know what I'm saying? And there's suddenly even a £20,000 or dollars is still a lot of money, but people are getting publishing for that, for like 5 or 6 albums, because they know these artists are in a state where they need the dollar, they need the check, rather than to hold on to their independence. And labels and publishing companies over the years have known this, man. But these days, with the sort of the platforms you can get on and everything else, you can build up your own audience if you're smart with it. You can actually get that leverage we're talking about. But yeah, man, I feel for them artists that take that check and then they blow up, and then there's all kinds of cases, big artists it's happened to, man, as well. But then you swings and roundabouts, you kind of think, but they got on and made millions in other ways. Do you know what I'm saying? So sometimes you do need to just get put on and get your stuff out there, and it's different for everybody, I guess, man.
I think the challenge is, as an independent, you have to do it all yourself. And you could do it, like you said, you can make the music, shoot the music video, send it out, but you're the one who makes the music video, puts it out, does the promotion, does it all. So some people just don't have the skill set to be able to do it all. And
some people just want to be creative as well. Some people, I don't mind doing some of the business stuff as well. I'm quite hands-on with what I do. But some people, they just literally, all they want to do is go to the studio. So they need a team around them to make things work. And record labels sometimes can have a good team. Do you know what I'm saying? Whether it's the top marketing guy, or they could have the access to the right sort of video directors, even stylists, these kind of things. Do you know what I'm saying? That sometimes an independent artist doesn't think about. So when he puts out his video, it pales in comparison to something on a record label where they've had this big team behind it. You know what I mean? But a lot of the time it's just the energy you bring, man. If you bring the right energy, you could outshine something with a big budget and something that's raw. I've done videos that have had quite decent budgets, and then I've done videos in the back of a car just spraying lyrics, and they're the ones that have gone viral because they just hit people differently. It's just the rawness and the emotion of it, and it's just, you know, something you'd even plan on doing, and it just ends up blowing up much more than a video you spent weeks planning. So, you know, that's you never know. And the people, I always say this, the people always have the final say on stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? People can, I mean, they can kind of get you on the radio, they can kind of push you in the face and trying to, you know, manipulate the algorithms and all that kind of stuff. But if the people ain't feeling it, man, then it's not really going to go anywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? The people have to have the say, man. It's like when I came into the drum and bass scene, I was brought in by two of the big heavyweights of the scene, but I had to hold my own. They put me on the stage, big love to Skibbity and Funstar. But, you know, if I wasn't brought on by them, and if I didn't do my thing and the crowd weren't feeling it, all the bringings in the world still couldn't help you, man. Do you know what I mean? You've got to, the audience has got to be feeling it and gravitate to what you're doing and get some sort of connection to it, man.
Yeah, I love that. I love that as a piece of advice. The audience
Yeah.
and the consumer ultimately decides. And
Yeah,
no
they
matter
do.
how much money you have, like how many movies have huge budgets and they flop because the consumers are like, this sucks.
Over and over, man. Because that, yeah, again, I was talking to someone about this the other day. You might have amazing special effects, a big team, a big budget, but if there's no story, if there's no characters you can relate to on a human level, then it's just a computer game. It means nothing. Same way as, like, you know, you could have these amazingly brilliant produced records, but there's no tune in there. If there's no heart in there, if the MC or the singer is not connecting emotionally with people, whether they're making people happy, making people dance, making them angry, teaching them something, if they're not connecting in that way, then the people are not going to resonate with it on that way. Do you know what I'm saying? And it will just be here today, gone tomorrow, microwave kind of music or another film, another program. Do you know what I mean? But we know the things that stand the test of time and really resonate with people have a lot more depth than that. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, it's all about the depth.
Have you been approached by a label? Like, have labels reached out to you to be like, hey, would you
Yeah, I've
consider a
worked.
deal?
I've had certain deals with labels over the years, some sort of big independents, and I was signed on a sort of development deal with Mercury Universal years ago, man. But this is sort of what I'm saying. Like, it was a struggle at that time with the music and getting them to understand it and sort of the real vision behind it and everything else. So we parted amicably, and I'm just happy doing things independently, man. Do you know what I'm saying? And for me, it's quite nice because I do a lot of touring, a lot of shows, so that's kind of where my main financial thing comes in. So I don't have to feel pressured to make a tune for the radio or a tune to fit certain things. I can just do my thing, and it goes to the audience, and you know, it just works well for me organically. But yeah, man. But you know, it just depends. I mean, in the UK at the moment, there's a lot more A&R men and people in the industry that actually do understand the music. It's really changed over the last 5-6 years, man. There's people in positions now who do understand what's going on and just let the artists do their thing. They're just good with marketing and stuff like that. So it's changed very much over the years, man. So I think the UK scene now, it's getting better and better, man. There's youngers coming up now, and they're benefiting from sort of all the hard work other people have done throughout the years, you know, like, so they're in a good position now to really capitalize on it. And if you look at this country, the UK right now, like literally half our pop chart, the mainstream chart is drill, hip hop, Afro beats, kind of, you know, all derivatives of what we call hip hop. Do you know what I'm saying? So over here right now, it is like pop music. Everywhere you go is hip hop, drill, bashment, all this kind of stuff, and it's all kind of a melting pot of sounds that the UK have put together. And it's over here, it's like it's blowing up right now, man.
So did they not allow that when you were on a deal? Was it very much like, hey, I've got this vision for a song and I don't see it?
You didn't really have the back then when I was kind of working with the label, like I didn't have that. Definitely not, man. Do you know what I mean? They didn't have even A&Rs in the label that were like, let's say, credible, who understood about the music. These were people that understood rock music or how to do pop music or that kind of thing. And that was what they were good at. That was their expertise. But then they're trying to understand this hip hop thing, and they just don't get it, man. Well, they're not saying they don't get it now, because they have got people in position now that are working with these young artists and working with them well and developing them and getting out the right kind of music for them. But back in the day, it wasn't like that, man. Definitely not. Which is another reason I kind of moved to the independent thing and was really like grateful to be brought into the drum and bass scene, which is like a worldwide kind of scene where we go all around the world doing shows and big festivals and that kind of thing. And I tried to bring my hip hop influence into that. make the concepts of the tunes and that a bit more lyrical and stuff, rather than just party kind of vibes. You know what I mean? So I kind of brought all my hip hop influence over to drum and bass, which is why people in Canada have said to me, who are hip hop heads, they can relate to what I'm saying. They feel it, you know what I mean, on a different level to certain other guys, because it's just got that hip hop. I do a lot of the metaphors and the similes, you know how it goes, man. We're just hip hop kids, but we love drum and bass and grime and jungle and all these kind of derivatives of hip hop as well.
You said that like half of the charts are hip hop, or like hip hop elements, or hip hop
Yeah.
inspired. What do you think really drew in the UK so quickly? Because it seems like a meteoric rise in terms of, you know, not only to accept the music, but then to also adapt it so quickly, and then have so many people love it within a really short period of time. Like, that's huge numbers. We don't have that here at all.
Yeah.
In terms
Yeah.
of,
Well, yeah, it's a lot, man. I mean, there was I think it really changed when there's a group called So Solid Crew, who are like, they come from the garage scene, but they were sort of the forefathers of grime kind of thing, because they were rapping on beats that were a little bit darker, 130 BPM tempo, and they managed to get chart hits with what they were doing. They cultivated a huge audience. They were so big on the streets. They ended up getting signed to a major, and in that case, I think the major just let them do their thing. You know what I mean? They came out and they kicked down doors. And then, based off the back of that, you had the likes of Dizzy Rascal, Kano, Wiley, Skepta, all that early grime kind of thing that was just, yet again, so big on the streets that labels ended up signing it because it was so popular with the young generation. So that was kind of opening doors with that. And then obviously over time, you had people like Drake co-signing gigs and Skepta, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the numbers started going up with the streams, and the videos were getting millions of views, and it was just, you know, the labels there to make money, really. That's what they're about. You know what I mean? They're not there to sign great talent, unfortunately, or, you know, their whole thing is based on what's selling, what's popping, what they can make money off. You know what I mean? And stuff in the UK did just get massively big with the audience, probably through things like YouTube as well. We had channels over here like SBTV, RIP Jamal Edwards, really exposed what was going on to a mainstream audience. Also GRM Daily and Link Up TV, all these platforms have been really instrumental in sort of bringing the music to an audience, and a massive audience, and blowing it up further and further. And that's kind of happened. It hasn't happened overnight. It's been like really like we've been twisting this jar, like a bit more open, and then now it's just fully open, and the music's everywhere. And, you know, the younger artists that are coming in now, they're really benefiting from all the work that Skepta and Gigs and Crypt and Conan, and there's so many, Rich 32, there's so many names I could mention that have just been pushing his music hard for years. And like I say, in the UK, it isn't like always straight hip hop. There's a lot of grime, which is obviously a bit faster tempo. Drum and bass is even faster than that. We like a lot of the fast stuff that is quite energetic over here. But there's also like kind of more kind of, I'm not going to say standard, but traditional hip hop that's big as well, like Skinny Man and Kalashnikov, Black Twang, who've been massive over the years. Do you know what I mean? And there's people like the Fly Hooligan now, who's killing it. So it's very much different styles. It's very versatile over here, man. But we all kind of rate each other and respect each other. And I just respect anyone that's pushed it forward and got it to the stage it is now, man. Because like I said, it hasn't happened overnight. A lot of the early UK hip hop guys really struggled, man, to get anywhere. But now, like, it's just a flourishing scene. Do you know what I'm saying? It's really good.
I think similar to the US, like the different accents within the UK really helped people find a new sound, because like the accents, the voices are different. The way you find pockets are different. The way you hit with beats is different. So I think, you know, the changing in accents and depending on where you're from really influences your ability and in terms of what you can do, purely because of the way that you use words and you use language. And I think that's underappreciated in, you know, why it's so versatile. I think that plays a huge part in terms of, you know, you see people from different parts sounding completely different, and they're like, you know,
someone from Manchester, for instance, which is, you know, somewhere else in the country from where I'm from, is going to come with a whole different accent, a whole different twang. Even what they would be talking about on the song would be different. The slang would be different. That makes it very versatile and very, like, you know, it's like you never know what you're going to hit. A rapper from Nottingham will not rap like a rapper from London. And one thing we did have to do early doors in the UK was we had to start using our own voices and our own accent, rapping in our own accent, because there were people initially kind of just emulating the American sound and copying that. And that's probably part of the reason that UK kids couldn't relate to it. But when you start doing the grime thing and making it more of a UK sound. And it's like it's our thing. We haven't got to compete with Snoop or Dre or anybody because this is our thing and we're doing it and our audience love it. And now that sound has gone sort of all over the world. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you look at even drill music, you know, that's, you know, there are a lot of even your sort of Pop Smokes and that, they was working with UK producers because that UK drill sound is kind of that almost that same sound as that Brooklyn drill they're all doing in the States. Do you know what I mean? And now people are looking to this country and seeing, boy, they've got their own thing. And we had to do that in the UK. We had to make our own thing rather than copy something and emulate something. It's fine to be inspired, but you should, in my mind, in hip hop, you should never copy someone else. You should try and be as original as possible and bring something to the table, man. I think of all the great hip hop tunes I heard over the years. When I heard "Come Clean" by Jay with the Damager, and I heard that sound, I was like, "What is that?" Because it wasn't. I hadn't heard something like that before. You know, when I first heard Wu-Tang, I was like, "What is that?" When Nas, there's no one like him before. Do you know what I'm saying? There's people you could say, "Oh, G-Rap." You can tell G-Rap inspired Nas and that, and you can hear it. But he definitely did his own thing, and everyone has to bring their own thing to the table, their own flow, and they're the artists that will inspire the next guys to come and be original and keep this whole thing going, man.
Well, there's no such thing as an artist who is purely themselves. Every artist had to listen to something, and subconsciously or consciously, they influence you, your style, what you respect. And you're right, there is a difference between being a biter and literally copying and going, I'm going to write down exactly how they did it and I'm going to copy them, or being influenced by what they bring to the table. And you're like, I want to bring that to the table, the lyricism, the flows, you know, the uniqueness of it, and try to do it myself. Like for me, I talk about Big Pun on this podcast a lot. Big Pun to me is the best rapper of all time.
Oh,
Purely
wow.
because
Do you know what? Yeah. He's my favorite rapper of all time. I won't call him the best because that's subjective, but to me, he's my favorite rapper of all time. When people ask me, what's your top five? It sometimes changes, but Pun is always at the top. Nas, Biggie, Ghostface. And then it gets difficult.
I always
But
put
man,
Big L in there as well.
I love L, man. L is probably in my top 10, man. Definitely.
But like, yeah, I always say, like, you know, Big Pun, his flow, his breath control, his ability to manipulate words, his, you know, just knowledge of the English language was so impressive. He had so many multi-syllable rhymes. He had
incredible.
such a breadth of range in terms of what he could really deliver. So like I can understand someone going, I'm going to listen to that and I want to bring the skill set that he brought. I want to make sure that I have the breath control. I want to make sure that, and he was a big dude, like he was fucking fat as shit, but like his technique in terms of an artist is unparalleled in terms of just, there's just little things that you notice the more you start listening to it, the more you actually pick up. Like I still listen to it and still miss lyrics that I'm like, holy shit, he had the double meaning in there. And I heard that track 10 years ago.
No, for real, man. And when like something like Super Lyrical, which he did with Black Thought on the first album, you know, I wrote a whole essay on that for university once, just breaking down how much multis he's doing, what these like that. It was incredible when she started, because sometimes you can listen to Pun and it's so effortless. Other rappers, you can tell they're really trying to do loads of multis, and that's the Pun. That's how he did it. That's how it came to him. That's how his pen worked. You know what I mean? He was just incredible with it like that. But he would say, like, I've seen interviews with him, and he'd say, "Oh, I was just building from the Rakims, and I was just building on from the Kanes and G-Rap and these sort of people." So, like exactly what you said, that's what people are doing off him now, and other certain rappers that brought that skill set and that to the table. So it's to be inspired by that level and want to take it further and just add your own little twist to it. That's how things continue, man, and that's how you keep the essence as well. Do you know what I'm saying, of what these incredible guys have brought to the table?
Yeah, and I mean, in the UK, I know Stormzy is huge worldwide, but he's also, you know, showing that you can do both, that you don't have to just be super lyrical. You can make some pop tracks. You can make, because he's been one of those beacons of light in terms of like, you can really blow up huge. And he started with like, you know, the traditional grime scene. He started there. And he's moved into using, you know, American beats. So it's shown that there is room for, you know, UK artists and artists all around the world to start in the scene where you grow up, but also develop and actually use beats from other areas of hip hop and really flex.
Definitely, man. He was, again, when we're talking about earlier on, we're talking about the So Solid and the Dizzies and the Skeptors. he's the kind of if you think about it, massive part of it blowing up to the level it is now. Whether that's timing or anything else, he was in the right place at the right time. I've never met Stormzy, but apparently people said he's a nice guy as well. And that sometimes goes a long way in this industry. If you can spit and you're sick at what you do, but you're also a nice guy and you're not bringing no drama to the table, sometimes the doors open a little bit more and you get to go through than some other guys. Do you know what I mean? So I think he benefited from that as well, not having so much of ego and all that kind of thing. And like you say, he was open-minded. He came in rhyming on grime beats, you know, doing the Fire in the Park thing and jumping on old Z Dot beats. It was originally a Wiley track and just killing it, murking it. And then he developed once he had his platform. Do you know what I'm saying? But he can still go back and do that, like he showed in that clash with Wiley. He can still go back and keep it ultra grimy. Like you said, he does both, man. So, and he's massive over here now. Like he just did. There's a venue called the O2 over here, which is a huge venue. You know, when Drake comes over, he'll do that venue. You know what I mean? And Stormzy sold it out 3 nights in a row. So you're not doing that if you're underground anymore. He's massively mainstream, but you know he's very well respected and rated at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
So interesting now to think of, like, you know, underground hip hop becoming so mainstream. Like it is, because it comes, like, it's amazing to me. But it's also so interesting that like an artist can start so underground and then all of a sudden they're mainstream, but they were doing the things that they were doing when they were underground in a way. Like they're still, yes, they develop, but they're still obviously, you know, working on themselves. But it is really cool to see the evolution of the potential of any artist to be like, hey, you can start from nothing.
You can literally start from nothing, man. Like Stormzy, I remember the first time I see him was just literally, like I said, it was on one of these platforms where you just go in the booth. It's a thing called Behind Bars on Link Up TV, and he created a little bars. They got him in there. Next minute he was on the Charlie Sloth thing. Next minute he really stood out on that Fire in the Booth cipher that you might have seen, man. He just blew it to bits. Do you know what I mean? Everyone else was good on it, but that was his moment. So then all eyes were on him, and he capitalized on it, man. And that's I kind of see a parallel to myself in that, because when I was brought into the drum and bass thing, I was like, right, I'm with 2 of the heavyweight guys, but I've got to hold my own as well. So the first thing I need to do is do my own mixtape. It's fine working with these guys, doing loads of work with them, and everyone's loving it, but I want to prove myself in my own way, and I'm going to go hell for leather and go so hard to shut down any haters and just try and make my shit so tight that you can't really hate on it. You know what I'm saying? You can hate, you might not like me, I might not be your preference, that's cool. You might prefer someone else, that's totally fine, but you can't say it's whack. You know what I mean? You can't say the skill set isn't there. And that's what I went mad, like writing bar after bar after bar, learning bars, doing the pirate radio thing over here, then doing the internet thing, and then, you know, doing so many shows up and down the country that, you know, you just shut down that element of hate that comes towards you. And that's what Stormzy did. He took the ball by the horns. He knew he had a moment, and he just took it and ran with it. And like you said, from nothing to what he is now, he's like an international superstar. Do you know what I mean? Which is like incredible.
Yeah, have you ever had moments where you're like, maybe I won't make it? Maybe, you know, this is way harder than it.
I had a little period, man, when I was kind of a little bit negative about things and everything else. And you know, like I had to get myself out of that, man. I had to get myself out of that and just like realize that, you know, things will happen at the right time. Sometimes it's timing, man. Sometimes you want this thing so bad, and like nothing's not sliding into place, and things aren't working. And like I've seen so many artists, really talented people, fall to the wayside over the years because they didn't just keep going. Do you know what I mean? They didn't take certain opportunities. You know, they didn't like, when it was time to really go hard, they were so tired and drained by the industry or by the struggle. They didn't, and that inspired me as well, seeing people that are like, I can't be that, man. But you know what? It wasn't for me. Let me just break this down as well. It wasn't so much about making it. I would always rap and write bars no matter what. Even if I wasn't successful, I'd still do it anyway. I would never. I got so much love for the whole craft of it that even if I wasn't even releasing music, I would still be writing bars, throwing up freestyles on whatever channels and just doing it purely for the fun. And I've never lost that element. So even when certain times I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll never make it to a certain level or that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I always just thought, I'm just going to keep going because I love it, man. And I think that's what you have to do as well. You'll get more blessings and more sort of stuff thrown your way if you just keep going, keep enjoy. If you enjoy it still. Some people, they lose their love for it. And you can hear that sometimes in the music. They're doing it, it's forced. Whereas me, I've never lost a love for it, man. I mean, I was just out listening to RJ Payne's latest thing, and he's so, oh, bro, the guy's incredible. Like, I'm rewinding the bars. I'm still like a kid with this shit, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'll be listening to that album again tomorrow, deciphering it, looking what I've missed, and I'm still like that with this music. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm still very like a fan of it as well. So in terms of sort of thinking, oh, I'm never going to make it, so I'm going to stop, that was never really a question. It was like, yeah, maybe I won't blow to the level I've wanted to. Maybe I came a little bit too early before these things started getting further and further, but I would never stop doing it because I just love it too much, man. And I'm blessed now to have an audience and, you know, bookings and all that kind of stuff. And I love creating in the studio, but I'm also someone who really thrives off the whole live thing. So that's why I love doing, delivering it to the audience, bringing the energy to the audience and watching that reaction, man. So yeah, keep the passion. That's what I'd say to people, man. If you keep your passion, being the biggest or being mid-range or being underground, if you've got your passion for it and you enjoy it, then you'll continue and you'll start to thrive, man. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's interesting because it's like, do you want to be a full-time artist or do you want to be like your Stormzy level big? And there's a difference between the two, because you can still be a full-time artist, make good money, be successful. You know, you won't be recognized the way Stormzy's recognized, where he walks down the street and he gets mobbed, but you can still be professional. You can still literally not work a full, like, it's, you know, artist is a full-time job, but you don't have to have a boss. You don't have to have a traditional 9 to 5 type role. But if that's what you want, it's gettable. But I think a lot of people get attracted to, and to be honest, I'm one of them. Like, I look at people like, for me, it's like Joe Rogan, right? In podcasting, and Joe Budden. I look, for whatever reason, Joe's are doing really well as a name. Yeah. That's a different topic. But I look at them and I'm like, they are so recognizable and they're bigger than almost the genre. They carried it forward, especially Joe Budden in hip hop. But like, you know, do I want to do this full time or do I want to be as big? Ideally both, but like the dream is to go full-time podcaster in the same way that the dream is to go full-time artist, because it's just a different type of life that you're living.
Yeah, no, of course, man. And then you wake up in the morning, you haven't got to think about jumping into the rush hour traffic. You've got to think about, oh, I've got to write this tune, or I've got to, like, you know, I've got a deadline for this feature, or, you know, I've got to, you know, do something like this. And this is all fun stuff to me. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's the blessing that comes with being full-time artist, whether you're kind of mainstream or whether you're on the level of you're just a working artist. You know what I mean? I've always said, if I don't have to get a 9 to 5, I'm just so cool with that. If all I've got to do is music, I'm so cool with that, because that's such a blessed position to be in. You know what I mean? When there's talented people that still have to work in factories and go work in offices every day, and they haven't got the time for whatever reason, because certain things not to put into their music or their real passion. You know, I've got all this time to put into this music and what I'm passionate about. So I feel very blessed for that, whether I'm mainstream, underground, known in some countries, international, whatever. Do you know what I mean? I feel very blessed to be able to just do music every day, man. That's a good position to be in.
Well, I mean, I'm not full-time podcaster, so I have a normal job that pays the bills, and it's like, and I've had people ask me before, like, how do you make the time? And it's like, well, I want it, so I make the time. You know, that's what it is. As simple as it is. Like, I don't look at it as how do I make the time. I look at it as what can I do more with the time that I've got. Yeah, and and like, you know, I still work out, see my friends, go to all those kinds of things. But like, I also dedicate time every weekend in the mornings. Like, it's 7 a.m. right now in Melbourne, and I have work after this. So like, when people ask me, you know, how do you have the time? Well, you make the time, because
you have to make the time.
I'm gonna be up before everyone else is up to do this. I don't give a shit. This is a dream come true to talk to people like you. Like, if I was a kid, like, this is a dream. This is crazy levels of, like, you know, I would even have this opportunity. So this isn't, I always say, this isn't work to me. This is like pleasure. This is fun, because I'm talking about a genre of music I like, with musicians I'm always impressed by, and every artist is interesting. There's not one artist is not. They're all interesting in their own way. And, you know, that's why I say I don't plan the questions on the show, because I actually want to know about you. I want to know your opinions. So that's what it is. And I think that's a really good point you made, is like, you would rap regardless of whether you made money. And I
Yeah,
would
yeah,
continue this regardless of whether I made money because it's
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
much fun. So I think
Mm.
that is a really good, like, just jumping off point. Whereas if you love it enough,
Mm.
you'll never give up on it.
No, no, definitely not, man. Definitely not. That's the whole thing. If you retain that passion and that love, and like you said, it's fun for you. You know, it's fun for me. When I buzz out in the studio all the time, some people, oh, I don't want to go to the studio. I'm like, you're mad. I'd be in there if I could be in there all week just making tunes. That's what I do. Obviously, I've got other stuff I've got to do, shows, and there's like business meetings and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? But and I just love the shows and the studio, and that's my passion, man. That's what carries me forward. There's always another beat that's going to inspire me. There's always another artist I'm going to hear that I want to get on a tune and vibe with and push my levels up through working with them and be inspired by them. There's always another challenge. And people say, oh, but you've been around for a minute, brother. How do you keep writing? It's like, because there's always a new story. There's always something going on in my life, or there's always something I'm seeing on the telly, or there's always something crazy like this COVID thing that went down. Do you know what I mean? There's always something new to gain inspiration from and talk about in your music, man. So the story never ends and the journey never ends if you retain that passion, that love for it, and just that drive to just keep pushing yourself forward, man. I'm never happy. I'd always want to beat my last tune, my last EP. I'd always want to make the next one better than that, rather than just, oh, have you got to put something out, man? Do you know what I mean? Like, some people just get to that stage where they lose the passion and drive, and I think you sometimes hear that in the music a little bit. And some people are honest about it. They say sometimes they just have times where they just have the writer's block and all that, and they need inspiration and stuff. But yeah, like you said, man, you make time for it, and if you really love it, the passion's what carries you forward, man.
Do you think people with writer's block, they just don't write enough? Part of me thinks like sometimes you just got to put the pen to the pad, even if it's
Yeah,
garbage. Like you,
yeah, you
you
have to,
force
yeah, you
yourself.
got totally. You got to. I say you got to keep this tap switched on, man. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, like sometimes I'll work on a tune, or it happens a lot actually. I'll write just because I've got to keep in the mode. I've got to keep on that thing, and some tunes will never come out because the beat isn't up to the level of other. You know what I mean? You've got a standard of stuff, but you have to keep in the midst of it. You have to keep doing what you do, and you can't wait for the ultimate beat or the ultimate feature or the ultimate opportunity. You've just got to be in the mix. In it, you got to be in it to win it, man. If you're not in it and you're not like, it's like you mentioned, an athlete earlier or a boxer, they don't stop training, man. They never stop training. Or a football player, you train constantly for that time when you've got to go and score, or that time you've got to get in the ring. You know what I mean? You keep training, you keep in that beast mode, that beast mentality, and sort of not putting the pen down is part of that, definitely. Or if you're a producer, you don't stop making beats because you're not particularly inspired. You go in there and you try and crank it out because you never know when that gem's going to come. Do you know what I mean?
I think part of the reason is like you don't know what you've got until you got it, in a way.
Mm, mm,
Like there's
mm.
so many stories of artists who think that their songs suck. They don't
Yeah.
like the beat, they don't like what they did on it, but because they did
Mm,
something experimental, then they drop
mm.
it and the consumer loves it and it
Yeah.
makes them go huge.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
true, man.
like there's a story about Havoc and his beat. Oh, the classic beat. I forget what it was called, but Havoc has a beat on Mob Deep where he
Oh, okay.
wanted to trash it, and
Really?
Prodigy was like, "What are you doing? This is the best beat ever."
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
was just Havoc wasn't happy with it, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
kept it because Prodigy was like, "No, this is amazing."
Adamant. Yeah.
But
Mm,
like because you're hard on yourself, you
mm,
sometimes don't see the gold that's right in front of your face, and
mm,
you kind of get down on yourself because you trash it and you're like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. But
mm.
like you never know until you put it out.
No,
That's the
exactly. You
thing.
never know how it's going to resonate with people, man. And that's why it's good to have a good team of people around you as well. Not yes men, that kind of vibe, but people that just, will sometimes tell you, no, the tune's hard, or that, no, you don't need to re-record that verse. It's perfect. You need those kind of people in the studio, trusted people that know the music and know you as an artist. And someone like, if you look at, like you mentioned, Mob Deep, man, they're one of my favorite groups of all time. I love Prodigy's, like, to me, one of the greatest MCs, and Havoc Speaks, man, like incredible. So their relationship was one of those relationships where it's obviously if Havoc wasn't like too up on it, but Prodigy would say, no, we got to go through with this. And it probably worked vice versa for them as well. Do you know what I mean? All those great groups that have actually come together. I don't think there's not enough groups now, man. There's too many, everyone's solo, like groups with a good theme because it's the meeting of the minds coming together. You got to think about some of the groups back in the day, and even the Griselda thing now, being Benny and Conway and West Side Gun, you know what I mean? They probably all inspire each other, and probably Wu is even the greatest inspiration of having 8 or 9 MCs or just all coming to the table with crazy ideas, flows, and styles, inspiring each other. You know what I mean? It's like once you get that sort of energy in a room, it can be powerful, man. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I heard with Wu-Tang, RZA would give, they would all sometimes rap on a tune, but whoever had the best verse would get it. And it sometimes didn't have to be Method Man, who was probably the star player at the time. Sometimes it could be You God, he just came better that day. Do you know what I mean? And I think that was what made them special as an entity, and what makes kind of groups of minds coming together. And it pushes it forward, like you said, because we never know, man. Might have scrapped that beat, and that might have been Shook Ones too. I don't know what the beat was, but
that was what it was. Shook Ones Part 2. That's the exact beat.
Which is the, to me, the greatest hip hop beat of all time, and he wanted to scrap it. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I think that a lot of people don't do groups anymore because it's, you know, everyone and Slaughterhouse have their issues right now with them breaking up and whatever's going on that front. But I think the challenge is that like every artist, or most, I won't say every, most artists want to be solo artists and they want to have their own time in the sun rather than being with a group. And you see it not only in hip hop, but in pop, in rock music. So bands just break up. You start to get egos and you start to have your own vision of what your own career looks like. So I think that's the challenge, is that people are starting to be like, I just see they all end up fighting at some point and they all end up breaking up because
it gets tricky, man. It does get tricky. Do you know what I mean? But yes, when it comes together, it's incredible at the same time, man. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Well, what can I say? I think do what's right for you. But man, I always wanted to ask, because I know you've got projects coming out, but I got one more question for you and then we'll plug some projects for you. But this is the only question that I plan on the podcast. Is probably the hardest question that I ask. But if you had to recommend one album that everybody should listen to at least once to get an appreciation of, it can be any genre of music. It can't be your own, obviously. What would it be? Because I know artists have tried to plug their own stuff, and I'm like, we will plug you. That's why you're here. But
someone was saying to me the other day, like, oh, like you put your name in the top 10 drum and bass MCs and you've got to include yourself. And I'm like, no, I'm not in that, man. I can't even, to be honest, I find sometimes I have to listen to my music to learn it. But once I've done something in the studio, I'm just on to the next thing. I don't really listen to my own shit. So that's not me, man. But anyway.
I'm the same with the podcast, to be honest. I edit it and I make sure it's good and I put it out, but I don't go back and I'm not like, that was the best episode. I'm going to listen to my voice again. I'm going to listen to how I speak on that. Like there are moments I can enjoy. There are like little clips that I can enjoy, but yeah, I'm with you on that. Like once it's done, you put it out there. All right, next thing.
Yeah. So I think the album for me that I would just say anyone go and check it out. It's just a beautiful piece of work, man. To me, it's a masterpiece. It is Nas Illmatic. You know, when I heard that, I just thought it was the perfect album. Do you know what I'm saying? Like just the way that Large Professor and Q-Tip and obviously Primo and even LES, the Life's a Bitch record, and only having one feature at the time, and it was just all about Nas and his story. And it just captivated me and my best friend Driscoll as a kid, man. We just played the album over and over and over and over. And I think if you like, you don't even have to really be into hip hop to appreciate it, because it's just beautiful music, man. Like The World Is Yours, the piano on it. It's just, to me, it's a flawless album, man. I think there's one average song on there, One Time for Your Mind. It's not like amazing, but you know, filler.
Some people might hate on you for that. But you know, to be fair, it is an iconic album. It influenced so many people and it changed the genre as well for like what people were talking about. You can talk about the landscape. You can talk about, you know, more than just your own experiences. You can talk about more things than that. I think for what it did for not only music, but for hip hop specifically was undeniable.
Definitely, man. Cool, brother.
Well, man.
Yeah, man.
Obviously,
you've got, man. We'll have to do a part 2 when I've got a little bit more time, man.
For sure, you're a busy man, but talk to me. You've got things dropping. You've got projects coming out. What can people look out for? Obviously, they can follow you on IG, Harry Shotta. But
real Harry Shotta on there. But yeah, watch for some new drum and bass music dropping real soon. Lyrical drum and bass vibes. Got loads of stuff coming out. I'm working on a hip hop project as well. So there'll be a lot coming out real soon, man. And you'll see us on the roads, man. We'll be hopefully back in Australia soon as well. It's been a while. Obviously, I've been to New Zealand, Australia many times. So it'd be good to get out and connect with you, man. If you're out there, man, do you know what I mean? When I am and everything as well.
For sure. Well, I've got the studio ready to hear. I've got the couch. So like it is ready for when people come out. We can do this in person, but definitely would love to have you back on the show. But obviously make sure you check out Harry, make sure you check him out on Spotify, YouTube. And as we said, he's got some amazing tracks, and, you know, Jack of All Trades dropped as well. So make sure you check out that single. That's really catchy. I was listening.
Shout out to Carousel, man. That's my boy. Yeah.
Carousel, I was listening to that today. And I love the swing on. I was going to say, I was like, remember to say this, but Jack of All Trades, Master of Some. I love that line in there. It just, I don't know, it just hit me. I was like, oh, that's actually really good. But yeah, no, man, absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and I appreciate you giving me the time.
Thank you very much, brother. Wicked, man. Take care.